I'm Madison Anderson, a software engineer in my early 30s, living independently in Cleveland. I've worked hard to build a stable life here, a steady job, my own place, and a reliable 2021 Toyota Highlander that's fully paid off, with low mileage and a pristine interior. It's more than just a car. It's my freedom, the way I commute to work and stay self-reliant. I don't lend it out, not even to close friends, especially after what happened last time. My parents borrowed my car for the weekend to take my golden sister and her kids out. By Monday, I was hit with a $1,900 towing bill and the police calling me nonstop. When I confronted them, I had to lay it out clearly. I was about to leave town and they were not to touch my car. No errands, no moves, not even in an emergency. I was flying to Indianapolis for a 4-day project meeting, packed with sessions and networking I'd been planning for months. The night before, I called home to check in and reinforce the rule, reminding them I'd be away and that nothing at my place was to be disturbed, especially the car. The last incident still burned in my mind. My sister had grabbed the keys for a quick trip and ended up in a fender bender while distracted on her phone, leaving me with over $4,000 in repairs I had no part in. They brushed it off as a learning moment, but to me, it was a blatant disregard for my property. After that, I locked it down permanently. No exceptions. I secured the car in my driveway and left a spare key with a colleague down the block, strictly for real emergencies like a break-in, not for family use. As I boarded the flight, a nagging unease lingered, but I pushed it aside, focusing on the conference ahead. Little did I know that weekend would unravel everything in ways I couldn't ignore. If you've ever had family cross boundaries like this, smash that like button and subscribe for more real stories that hit close to home. The conference room buzzed with final preparations, but my focus shattered when my phone started vibrating insistently on the table. An unknown number. I almost silenced it amid the networking chatter, but it kept ringing. On the third call, I answered cautiously. A steady voice introduced himself, Officer Anthony Brooks from the Kansas City Police Department. He verified my details as Madison Anderson, owner of the registered Toyota Highlander, before explaining the situation. My car had been impounded from a suburban street in Kansas City, where it had blocked a homeowner's driveway. All weekend, frustrated residents, unable to leave for their morning commutes, had alerted authorities about the improperly parked vehicle, which looked abandoned. Shock coursed through me. The car wasn't just towed randomly, it had been left carelessly, as though the occupants assumed entitlement over public spaces. Officer Brooks explained that the people linked to the car weren't listed as owners. A woman claiming to be my mother argued it was a shared family asset used with my approval. The retrieval cost was $1,900, all without my permission. The case could even escalate to unauthorized vehicle operation, with possible legal consequences. Inside, I felt a whirlwind of emotions: outrage at their audacity, frustration over the financial hit, and a deep sense of violation piercing through my professional composure. I told Officer Brooks firmly that no one had permission to access or drive my car, let alone transport it across state lines. I reminded him of the explicit instructions I'd given before leaving Cleveland. He acknowledged my position and promised updates. Less than 10 minutes later, he called back. The Highlander had been spotted on the highway, heading back to Cleveland. Officers had stopped it, evacuated all passengers, and secured the vehicle. Visualizing the chaos from afar intensified my turmoil. The family stranded on the roadside, children confused and upset, surrounded by the remnants of a ruined outing, sandy shoes, discarded toys, and the lingering scent of what was meant to be leisure, now turned to disaster. Officer Brooks described the scene just beyond a rural exit. The car bore clear signs of misuse, beach equipment crammed inside, backpacks strewn about, and traces of a dog everywhere. The image of negligence fueled my resolve, even as the conference sessions continued. Attempts to reach me flooded in, calls and messages, but not a single one from my mom, dad, or Katie. Notifications piled up, yet I stayed composed, channeling my simmering rage into professionalism. This breach wasn't just inconvenient. It was a deliberate disregard of my boundaries, From breaching my garage security with an outdated code to exploiting a spare key Katie had secretly copied. My prized possession had been turned into their mobile hub for a trip overloaded with coolers, chairs, and uninvited passengers, including Clayton and the dog, entrusted only for simple care. Later that afternoon, a rarely contacted cousin reached out with fragments of the chaos, pieced together from overheard accounts. The scene had devolved into utter disarray, youngsters wailing amid heaps of luggage, my mom vocally contesting the officer's authority on the grounds of familial bonds, and my dad attempting to bargain, only to find his efforts futile against protocol. Forced to improvise, they summoned a rideshare van for the long journey back to Cleveland, racking up expenses over $300. Midway through the ride, my dad's payment method failed, likely strained by prior charges or the towing itself, compelling Katie to convince Clayton to cover the remainder. The trip stretched into stifling silence, punctuated by simmering resentment and finger-pointing, each person stewing in their own role without once attempting to reach me. As evening approached, I muted all alerts and settled for a modest hotel meal, the day's revelations weighing heavily on me. This wasn't just about physical damage. It exposed entrenched patterns of entitlement I'd long overlooked. Gazing at the urban skyline, coffee in hand, a steely clarity emerged. I would not intervene. I would let the consequences unfold naturally, setting the stage for irreversible shifts upon my return to Cleveland. The barrage of voicemails began the next morning as I wrapped up the conference in Indianapolis. My phone became a relentless source of notifications, each one a fresh stab of manipulation from back home. Messages from my mom, dad, and Katie poured in, none offering so much as a hint of remorse. Instead, they twisted the story, insisting I owed them for years of supposed sacrifices, claiming family naturally shared resources without question. Lori's message droned on about the burdens of raising me, implying my success demanded repayment. Patrick's tone carried disappointed authority, a reminder that blood ties supposedly outweighed personal boundaries. Katie echoed the sentiment, accusing me of pettiness over something as trivial as a vehicle, framing their actions as harmless bonding time. Not one apology surfaced, only layers of guilt-tripping and deflection that had become their standard playbook. By Wednesday afternoon, I boarded the flight back to Cleveland, the hours in the air amplifying my resolve to confront the fallout head-on. Landing felt like stepping into a storm I had anticipated but wasn't fully prepared for. I headed straight to the impound lot. The sterile office reeked of bureaucracy as I signed paperwork and handed over $1,900 in fees. The attendant eyed me with a mix of sympathy and curiosity, perhaps sensing the personal drama behind the transaction. Retrieving the keys, I approached the Highlander, its familiar shape now marred by unfamiliar marks. Opening the door revealed evidence of their unauthorized excursion, a long scratch etched across the rear passenger panel, sticky residue in the cup holders from spilled drinks, and an overpowering mix of sunscreen and fast food odors clinging to the upholstery. Sand littered the floor mats, dog hair coated the seats, and a faint crack spiderwebbed the infotainment display. The interior, once meticulously maintained, now bore the scars of neglect, crumpled wrappers tucked into pockets, water bottle rings on the console, and a general disarray that screamed disregard for my property. Driving home through Cleveland's familiar streets only intensified the sense of intrusion. Each bump reminded me of the miles they'd clocked without consent. Once inside my quiet house, I parked in the garage, locked it securely, and sank into a kitchen chair. The silence amplified my thoughts. Monday's initial rage began to ebb, replaced by a clearer perspective on their entitlement. This wasn't just about the car or the bill. It was the cumulative weight of their expectations, treating me as an endless resource rather than an equal. I replayed their voicemails in my mind. Their words no longer stung, but solidified my stance. I was done bending to their narratives, done overlooking the lack of mutual respect that had eroded our connections over time. That evening, I took the first steps toward reclaiming my boundaries. I logged into my bank account and canceled the recurring Amazon shipments of school snacks and supplies I had set up for Katie's kids, a gesture I once viewed as supportive but now recognized as enabling. Next, I contacted the vet clinic, removing my name from the emergency contact list for their family pet, a role I had assumed during prior financial tight spots. Each action felt deliberate, a methodical severing of obligations that had bound me unwittingly. No more quiet subsidies, no more filling gaps created by their poor choices. As night fell, the emotional shift settled fully. Not sorrow, not lingering anger, but a profound sense of finality. Their behavior had illuminated the imbalance. They valued convenience over consent, and I refused to perpetuate it. The done feeling wasn't dramatic. It was liberating, a quiet acknowledgement that self-preservation demanded distance. For the first time in days, I slept without the constant undercurrent of tension, knowing these initial cuts were just the beginning of enforcing boundaries long overdue. That evening, I drove to their house unannounced. The familiar route through Cleveland's suburbs felt charged with purpose as I pulled into the driveway. The Highlander's engine hummed softly before I turned it off. Warm lights glowed inside, suggesting normalcy, but I knew better. This visit wasn't for reconciliation. Stepping out, I approached the door with steady steps, my mind replaying the calculated breaches that had led to this moment. Before I could knock, the door swung open. My mom stood there with a forced smile, as if expecting a casual drop-in. She greeted me with exaggerated cheer, commenting on how nice it was to see me so soon after my trip, her tone laced with the subtle relief that I had come around. My dad emerged from the living room, chuckling lightly in an attempt to diffuse tension, suggesting we sit for coffee like old times. Katie lounged on the couch, scrolling her phone without looking up, while Clayton hovered awkwardly in the background, his expression already hinting at discomfort. The kids played nearby, oblivious, and the dog lounged contentedly, none the wiser to the storm brewing. I didn't waste time on pleasantries. Standing firm in the entryway, I laid out the facts plainly. They had breached my home, taken the car without consent, and dragged my name into a police matter, all while expecting forgiveness. The room shifted instantly, their facades cracking under the weight of my words. My mom recoiled, her voice rising in accusation. I was abandoning them after everything they had sacrificed, she claimed, painting herself as the eternal victim. My dad interjected with talk of loyalty, insisting blood ties demanded I overlook such misunderstandings for the sake of family unity. Katie finally looked up, muttering that it was no big deal, just a weekend getaway to bond, downplaying the intrusion as overreaction on my part. Clayton stayed silent, his face etched with regret, eyes darting as if questioning his role in the escalating mess. I didn't raise my voice or engage in their deflections. I simply reiterated that their actions had severed any remaining trust. No more financial crutches. No more favors to bail them out of binds. No more stepping in for bills or supplies. The declaration hung in the air, stripping away the illusions they'd clung to. Their responses escalated into chaos. My mom's shouts about betrayal echoing through the house, my dad's desperate pleas for harmony, Katie's eye rolls and snide remarks on my supposed coldness, and Clayton's mute stance, speaking volumes of second thoughts. The kids paused their play, sensing the shift, but I held my ground, unmoved by theatrics. Turning, I left without further debate. I walked back to the car, the door closing behind me with finality, and drove away. I powered off my phone, its glow fading into darkness as I navigated quiet streets toward home. The night's stillness enveloped me, free from the incessant pings that had plagued the past days. Settling into bed, sleep came easier than expected, unburdened by guilt or unresolved tension. In that quiet aftermath, a subtle tranquility emerged, not sharp anger, but grounded peace rooted in clarity. Their outburst had only confirmed the necessity of my boundaries, highlighting the imbalance I'd tolerated far too long. It wasn't vengeance driving me. It was self-respect, a recognition that peace comes from releasing what no longer serves. The confrontation, though intense, marked a pivot, allowing me to envision a path forward, untethered from their expectations. For the first time, the silence felt empowering rather than isolating, a space where I could rebuild without the weight of their demands pressing in. The peace didn't last long. By the next morning, my inbox overflowed with messages from extended relatives, a clear sign that the smear campaign had begun. Voicemails from people I rarely spoke to urged forgiveness, insisting families were complicated but worth preserving, echoing the victim narrative my mom had spun. A cousin long out of touch texted about loyalty, implying I had overreacted to a minor borrowing incident, leaving them stranded and burdened with costs. Even the parent of one of Katie's acquaintances reached out, suggesting I reconsider, for the children's sake. None of these contacts originated from me. I hadn't shared details beyond the immediate circle. Yet the story had morphed into one where I appeared as the heartless aggressor, turning on them over a simple car use, forcing a humiliating return home. Lori's handiwork was evident in the distortions, portraying herself as the devoted mother betrayed by an ungrateful daughter, conveniently omitting the unauthorized entry, the police involvement, and the resulting damages. The manipulation spread through calls and social media whispers, painting a picture of abandonment that ignored their role in the escalation. It stirred a familiar frustration, but also a determination to respond with facts rather than emotion. I wasn't seeking vindication. I simply wanted the record straight, free from their filtered lens. I composed a group message to the relatives who had contacted me, detailing the sequence of events without embellishment: the garage breach using a retained code, the duplicated keys, the out-of-state trip that led to towing, and the lies told to authorities when confronted. I attached the $1,900 impound receipt as proof, along with photos capturing scratches, sticky interiors, and the cracked screen that hadn't existed before. The message clarified that this wasn't an isolated incident. It built on prior boundary violations, culminating in my refusal to enable further disregard. Sending it felt methodical, a release of suppressed truths into the open. The responses trickled in gradually, shifting dynamics in unexpected ways. Robin, my cousin, who often caught the family grapevine, called first. She shared her own uneasy encounters with Lori's tendency to twist situations for sympathy, describing similar patterns of exaggeration that had strained other relationships, validating my experience without prompting. An uncle followed with an apology, admitting he'd been misled about the severity and expressing regret for jumping to conclusions based on partial accounts. Two more cousins messaged support, revealing discomfort with the favoritism toward Katie that had long alienated others. As the truth circulated, the tide turned perceptibly, not dramatically, but enough to isolate the core instigators. Relatives who had initially sided with the family began withdrawing, some skipping planned gatherings, others offering quiet solidarity. I didn't pursue alliances or revel in the reversal. My goal was transparency, letting others form their own views unclouded by bias. The exposure stripped away the facade, highlighting the entitlement that had festered unchecked. Yet my family doubled down rather than reflected. Lori appeared at my doorstep the next day, arms laden with snacks she knew I favored, feigning a casual visit as if no rift existed. Her smile rang hollow, a thinly veiled attempt to erode my stance. When I didn't engage, Patrick lingered in my driveway upon my return from errands, blocking my path with casual conversation about moving past the misunderstanding. His presence felt intrusive, a physical manifestation of their refusal to accept consequences. These tactics only reinforced my detachment, strengthening my conviction that protecting my space was essential. 2 weeks passed in relative quiet. What had begun as a habitual glance at my banking app evolved into the discovery of a further betrayal. Reviewing my transaction ledger, I uncovered a trail of modest withdrawals totaling roughly $600, cleverly spaced to avoid immediate detection. Tracing the digital footprints, the source IP matched their household, leaving no doubt about the perpetrators. This covert siphoning, layered atop the recent vehicle overstep, stirred profound dismay, underscoring how their presumptions had infiltrated even my fiscal safeguards. The next day, an email from Katie arrived, brimming with acrimony. She condemned my boundaries as merciless, framing my withdrawal of support as a callous fixation on wealth over family. Her phrasing, steeped in the guile I had come to anticipate, contained a pivotal oversight. She implied my aloofness stemmed from elitism, as though my self-sufficiency mandated perpetual aid for their shortcomings. This candid exposure illuminated the simmering jealousies driving their conduct, reinforcing my determination to disentangle from the entangled dependencies. Indirect reports of my mom's health decline reached me through a peripheral family member, suggesting cardiac complications allegedly worsened by my actions. Skeptical, I verified the information directly with her medical provider, respecting disclosure limits. The feedback was definitive: no cardiovascular ailments existed. The warnings had come solely from someone impersonating me, fabricating crises to elicit pity. This orchestrated deception, designed to resurrect obligation and submission, revealed the extremes of their scheming, dissolving whatever remnants of compassion lingered. Equipped with this accumulating proof, I consulted an attorney specializing in familial and asset protections to construct defenses that could not be breached, ensuring my boundaries would finally be respected. We recounted the home incursion, the clandestine key replication, the towing episode, and the recent monetary meddling coupled with the fabricated wellness concerns. From there, we moved to invalidate outdated power of attorney forms from earlier years. We methodically severed lingering financial connections, including auxiliary funds I had once maintained out of past leniency, and removed my information from healthcare proxy rosters that had been vulnerable to misuse. The consultation expanded to overhauling entry protocols for my home, vehicle, and digital accounts, reinforcing barriers against any future violations. Amid these proceedings, a stark realization emerged. This wasn't limited to sporadic lapses, like the impound charges or weekend trip. It permeated my entire personal sphere. Their presumption of entitlement cast my achievements as collective property, ripe for extraction, undermining my independence at every turn. Acknowledging this pervasive intrusion solidified an unwavering disengagement, transforming what had once been a vague unease into a resolute mandate for autonomy. A few days later, the silence broke. Robin forwarded an invitation to a family barbecue in Cleveland. The details revealed their latest maneuver to marginalize me. The attached photo, an old group shot from happier times, had been edited to excise me entirely, cropping my figure out as if I had never existed in the memory. The event itself excluded me outright. In the descriptions, they positioned Dawn, my colleague who held the spare key, as a stand-in helper, toasting her contributions in my stead. The attempt to rewrite the narrative was transparent, a hollow effort to maintain appearances amid the fallout. Shortly after, an envelope arrived at my door containing a handwritten note from Lori, her script laden with accusations rather than reflection. It offered a so-called final opportunity for amends, completely devoid of acknowledgement for the breaches or damages she had caused. Instead, it shifted blame onto my supposed selfishness. I discarded the note without a second thought, the act symbolizing a broader severance from their influence. This prompted my final steps toward complete disconnection. I updated my phone number, refreshed all passwords across accounts, and even sold pieces of furniture they had once used to evoke obligation during visits. These measures, carried out deliberately over a quiet weekend, fortified my independence, erasing the last tangible links to their world. The repercussions for them manifested gradually but unmistakably, rooted in the real-world consequences of their choices, now unbuffered by my support. A lingering joint account triggered a security alert, prompting the bank to contact me for verification, a small but tangible reminder of the boundaries I had finally enforced.